Alright, too, we are back, of course, talking about FF7. We have a couple of bits of info coming out of Brazil Game Show with our boy Naoki Hamaguchi. Discussing the ending of 7 Remake Part 3 and also the potential of an FF7 anime. So as for an FF7 anime, we do have that already with The Last Order. That's something that does exist within the compilation. We've seen animated FF7 before. So that wouldn't be unheard of. Now, The Last Order is a bit controversial. It's been a long time since I've watched it. But I know people didn't like aspects of it, especially like the Sephiroth cloud altercation at like Mount Nebel reactor, right? Him jumping into the Mako as opposed to Cloud actually throwing him in there. It's always been such a weird change to me because you have the original FF7 that shows Cloud throwing Sephiroth into the Mako. And then, years later, we get The Last Order in like 2005, I believe. And they change it to where Sephiroth himself just jumps in there.
Mother, let's go to the promised land together.
And then a couple years after that, we get Crisis Core, which then goes back to showing Cloud throwing him into the Mako. And it's like, what are we doing? Why do we even do that? What was the point of this? And speaking of Crisis Core, it kind of reminds me of how they altered the design of the Buster Sword, right? The original design, FF7, in Crisis Core, you get like the gold like hilt or whatever it is, and I think you see that also in Advent Children. And then we get to the remake stuff these days, and they've changed it back to how it's supposed to look. And with the re-release of Crisis Core, with Crisis Core Union, they changed the Buster Sword to look like it's supposed to. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing? You already have like these iconic aspects of this games and stuff, and you're just like altering it for no reason over the years. So anyways, the anime thing, we had ANMTV post on Twitter saying, our writer also met with Naoki Hamaguchi at BGS and even managed to get an autograph. Jose even asked him about a possible Final Fantasy VII anime, with the response being, if they ask a lot, I'll do it. So yeah, it seems like Hamaguchi's at least open to the idea of that, the possibility of doing some sort of FF7 anime if the fan demand is there. It's also kind of a non-answer. We've got this before from them in the past about kind of other aspects of FF7 shit. Well, if the fan demand is there, we'll do it. I don't think it means anything. I've seen people quoting like when Shin Arc covered this piece of info and being, having their opinions and thoughts on the possibility and like referencing Last Order and things like that, right? And it's like, well, it doesn't mean there's going to be some sort of FF7 anime in the future. Like, I'm sure if there was enough demand for it, they would do it, but whether or not there's going to be one, I don't know. There was a rumor like 4 years ago that we talked about on the channel about there possibly being an FF7 anime attached to Netflix. We actually haven't looked at this in a while, so we might as well read it again. Both of these projects will be directed by Nomura. The anime dedicated to Final Fantasy VII Remake will tell new stories that intertwine with the plot and events of the main game. The first section will be dedicated to the events that it will precede the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake, while the second section will be dedicated to the events that occur simultaneously with the events of the game, coming to the end and also anticipating something for the future. And then they talk about a Kingdom Hearts anime. But speaking of that Kingdom Hearts anime, we did cover a rumor last year about the possibility of them working on a Kingdom Hearts movie or something at Disney, with possibly it being a blend of like CGI and live action. Not directly related to the rumor we looked at from 4 years ago, it was still kind of interesting. There was a rumor back then of some sort of anime thing for Kingdom Hearts. Handful of years later, we get another rumor of them making some sort of movie potentially with Disney. I don't know if anything's ever come from that anymore. I've not looked into that. I haven't heard anything about it since then. As for the FF7 anime aspect of that rumor, like obviously this is just a 4chan post, and that was 4 years ago. Nothing's came from that since. That doesn't mean there was never anything. There could have been. We had the FF9 animated series that seemed to be somewhat progressing at one point, but obviously that studio went under, and we've obviously not getting the animation, it would seem, at this point. There's any chance that this rumor was like real potentially? Like maybe there could have been an FF7 anime at some point in the works, then maybe it just got scrapped or never really got off the ground. Maybe it was only a conceptual thing back then. Who knows, right? Because the post does also mention the Final Fantasy XIV like TV series, and that was a thing that was supposed to be happening. I think I got canceled in the last like year or two or something. Like that was for sure a thing. I don't know if this 4chan post was the first one to talk about that or some shit. I don't know all that stuff. But it does talk about that series that was actually going to exist at one point. So as for an FF7 anime, like of course I'm down for that shit. If we're going to do something like that, like a new anime series or a new movie or a new spin-off game or some shit, like I want more lore, right? I want more things being added. You could go the prequel route. I don't necessarily want that unless we're going like super far back in the day, like the Cetra Genova War type shit or something. That'd be interesting a little bit. I feel like between Before Crisis and Crisis Core, and I guess a little bit of Last Order, we already got a good amount of like prequel stuff, things that happened prior to the events of FF7. So I don't know that I necessarily want like that kind of prequel shit. Also, I guess the First Soldier stuff now and whatever. I also don't necessarily just want like a retelling of FF7 in anime form, because like we can just play FF7. It's available on every goddamn platform, right? So I personally, if we're gonna add to the story, add to the compilation, whatever, to kind of go forward in time. For starters, we have two cliffhangers kind of up in the air still, right? The ending of Dirge of Cerberus, the secret ending with Genesis, of course, grabbing Vice's body. Like, that was fucking forever ago. Dirge of Cerberus came out forever ago, and we've never had a follow-up to that. Unless we're going to see that with Remake at some point. And then also the ending of Advent Children is kind of a cliffhanger too, because you have Sephiroth, the I'll Never Be a Memory thing, right? And based on the lore of Final Fantasy VII, Livestream Black stuff, like Sephiroth's not gone. He can still come back at some point. By the end of Advent Children, we haven't fully defeated Sephiroth, right? So like there would have to be some sort of payoff, I would think, to that at some point. Again, that could be in Remake, depending on how they're handling the story, what they're doing, timeline shit, sequel stuff, whatever. We can kind of put a pin in that, but as of right now, no follow-up to that shit. So, like, if they were to do an anime, I wouldn't mind, like, some sort of continuation of where we've kind of left off with the overall story. As for the Part 3 stuff, Genki posted this earlier. This says, FF7 Remake series director Naoki Hamaguchi says the ending to Part 3 is already complete in his mind, and he's sure it will be a conclusion that all fans will love. Of course, the conclusion of the third part is already fully formed in my mind. I believe this conclusion will please all the FF7 fan community that loved the original, as well as all those who become part of the FF7 fan community through the FF7 Remake series. I feel confident this new game will surely be loved by everyone. I gotta say really quickly, I find it a little bit weird, because this is at least like the second time super recently that Hamaguchi's been kind of talking about the ending of Part 3. And we haven't even got our first look at the goddamn game. Like we have no title, we have no teaser trailer, logo reveal, goddamn nothing about the game. He's already like in interviews talking about the ending in some capacity. He's obviously not spoiling anything, but like why are we talking about the ending? Now when it comes to the ending and pleasing like everybody, essentially, that's not reasonable. It's just not going to happen realistically unless the multi-world shit, multiple timeline stuff, whatever, if they can find a way to like, Aerith is alive, but she's also dead. Zack is alive, but he's also dead. We're following in the events of the original FF7, nothing's changed, but also here's a timeline where things did change, right? If they go that route, where like everything is technically true, then I guess they could please everybody or please the most people. But there's got to be like a conclusive ending, I would think. And if that's the case, then you're going to upset a certain group of people, depending on what the ending is. Like, if the game is a sequel, you're going to piss off the people that didn't want that. And if the game isn't that, the people that have dedicated years and years of their life now talking about the sequel theory stuff are probably going to be upset about that, right? So, like, there's just not a whole lot of ways that you can please everybody. As for the game itself, overall satisfying everybody, I think there's all the potential in the world for that, because I think Rebirth was fantastic. I think it was way better than Remake in terms of, like, a game to play, right? Both great games, but I just had a lot more fun with Rebirth, right? And they have all the potential to build off of Rebirth and do what Rebirth did but better with a third game, with the story events that are going to take place, the gameplay elements with like exploring the world map and shit, the exploring the ocean, so on and so forth. There's so much potential for the third game. They'd almost have to go out of their way for it not to be better than Rebirth. That, of course, remains to be seen, but I have a lot of like hopes and expectations for what they do with the third game, right? We still have all of the FF7 story left. All Disc 2 and Disc 3. And there's just so much things that we should be able to do in the next game. It should be, hopefully, a massive game. I hope it's like pretty goddamn long. I hope it's like, I don't even know, 150 hours, 200 hours to do everything type shit. Like, I am down for the biggest game possible that they can do, right? Because it's the last game. When it came to Rebirth, there was a lot of complaints about, like, the minigames is, like, a major one. Some of the side quests and some of the side content in general, whatever, right? And I, for the most part, have agreed with that stuff, and my stance on that hasn't really changed too much. But at the same time, this is the last game of the trilogy, so I kind of want them to just do everything. I'd rather them have a minigame that I'm not necessarily a fan of than just to have nothing. I would certainly prefer a minigame that I enjoy or that I like, but again, it's the last game, dude. So, like, go all out, throw whatever kind of content you want in the game, minigame, side quest, whatever, even if it's not the most satisfying thing in the world to do. To be very clear, I absolutely always prefer quality over quantity in kind of any game, right? But, also it's the last game, so fuck it. And really quickly, hopping back to the quote from Hamaguchi, he does say, like, the ending is fully formed in his mind, so maybe that's, like, a bit of a, like, hint at, like, development time type shit. Like, they haven't actually, like, made the ending yet, because he's talking about it being, like, fully formed in his mind. Like, they haven't maybe actually made that yet, but he has, like, the idea of what it's supposed to be. As always, I might be looking too much into it, but I just thought it was a little bit interesting that he talks about it being fully formed in his mind, as opposed to, like, oh, we've already completed making the third game's ending, and I think it'll satisfy the most people or whatever. It's just, the wording's a little bit weird. I don't know. Anyways, my dudes, that'll be the video, of course. Pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts on the potential of an FF7 anime? I wouldn't necessarily anticipated, because it's just kind of a non-answer. If they asked him about a fucking Final Fantasy VII dating sim, he'd probably say the same thing, right? If the fan demand's high enough, we'll do it. Like, so it's kind of a non-answer. It's whatever. But if they ever do it, what are your thoughts on it? And what would you want to see? What do you want the FF7 anime to be? Also, of course, he talks about Part 3's ending satisfying the most people. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you stand on that? Do you think that like the ending of Part 3 will satisfy essentially everybody? Either way, that's the video. Subscribe channel if you guys are new. Social works in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @ffvii. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.